Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another LoFi History. If this is your first LoFi History, welcome. This is your chance to ask historians Marie Walker and Glen Kyle pretty much any history question that you want. So go ahead and chat them, and we will be happy to answer them. I see that Laura already has a question for us. We also have a few questions that we didn't get to last time that I'm excited to address. But of course, first of all, we always talk about what Glen and Marie are wearing today. And Marie, I see you are already in the theme with the spooky season of October. So please tell us, what are you wearing today?
For our October Lo-Fi History, I decided to go and embrace the spooky theme that is Halloween. And yes. I am in full Victorian, mid-Victorian, mind you, mourning attire for a widow.
So
like what they would wear in the morning? Like
no.
when they wake up?
Maybe if they were really sad in the
morning.
If
they were really sad in the morning, yes. But no, mourning as in like sad mourning, like someone has died.
Mourning, yes.
Yes, so I have my widow's veil here, or weeping veil, black bonnet, black dress that's pretty plain, black gloves even, and you might see through, you can see there's a little bit of white flowers. White was also okay as an accent color in mourning because it's very plain. White was actually the main mourning color for children. And so if you had a child, they were expected to wear white with black accent colors. And for older people or ladies, it would be black with white accents would be okay. But mainly you wanted everything to be like as dark and black and sad as possible. And I would wear this for a year and a day.
Wow.
Because you would not want to change anything on the anniversary of the deceased death. So therefore you could change the day after.
Oh. Now, would you have multiple mourning outfits or just one that you would have to wear the whole year?
That depends on how much money I have.
Makes sense.
So rich people were able to have multiple outfits. If you were a poor widow, then you probably just had one. Fun fact about mourning clothes, they were the first off-the-rack clothes that you could buy, or one of the first off-the-rack options you could buy because, well, when someone dies, usually they don't, like, plan on dying.
Right.
So usually it's unexpected, especially in the 1800s when death is kind of just around the corner. Memento mori, remember you are mortal.
Yes.
Was a rather common catchphrase, more than we think of it today. But you were reminded of your own mortality a lot more back then, just because everything was harder.
Yes.
But
simply put, everything was harder. More dangerous, for sure.
Far more dangerous. Not as many life-saving measures.
Right.
So therefore, I would wear this. And I mean, if you were poor, you might just have a black dress. You might not have a veil. You might not have the bonnet. You might not have the gloves. So you would just do your best and wear the darkest color that you had to kind of show and signify that. But if you were a very wealthy widow and you could have the whole elaborate get-up for that long of time, and you were also, as a widow, therefore etiquette says you were not expected to go outside the house except to like religious functions or to very close family functions. Basically for that entire year you were supposed to basically like isolate yourself.
Wow.
More or less, or you were only allowed to go out to do charitable work. It was like you weren't allowed to go out and party, basically. No partying. No partying for you.
And of course that's for the middle and upper classes. The lower classes still had to work.
Still had to work.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. Now, would they work in mourning outfits? Or
at that point you would probably just, you don't have mourning things, you're just sad.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You might have like a black armband to kind of signify that you're in mourning, or you have like, I actually have a mourning cockade that you cannot see under here, but it's like this little rosette that's on my dress.
Yes, I see.
So they just like might have some ribbon that they might pin on to kind of signify, and not have the whole elaborate get up. But they would try to the best of their economic ability, show that they were in mourning. But your economic status depended on how much you were actually able to put into that.
Right.
Of course, men only had to wear a black armband and a black suit for like 3 months, and then they were fine to do whatever they wanted.
Not fair.
We gotta get hitched again.
Yeah, they could get married. Yeah. Guys could.
Well,
within those 3
surprises
months,
me.
as long as the wife joined in mourning for the other wife.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But
see,
ladies
I
were not
see.
expected to get married for like at least 2 years.
Oh,
2.5
wow.
years.
Right.
Wow.
That's the formal expectation. Again, those poor working lower class folks. It's like, we got to get some income.
Yeah.
We need someone to work in the factory / the farm. We got to get married soon. They sure couldn't wait a year and a day.
I
Somebody's
see.
got to survive.
Right.
So it's
Makes sense. Yes, marriage.
And no
is-
one was reading an etiquette book for people on the farm. No one
right.
cared.
Right.
This was all about appearances in society for the most part.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, Glenn, you're looking rather dapper today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do tell. What are you wearing today?
So I am wearing red.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Red
You're clearly
wool.
not in mourning.
This is no, I am not. This is I have to give full disclosure and perhaps burst some bubbles.
Oh.
So today we were I was James Oglethorpe for a class, and this is sort of minus the long flowing black locks is my James Oglethorpe getup. Brigadier General, aristocrat, man about London, and founder of the colony of Georgia. The deep dark truth is, this coat that I have to portray Oglethorpe is really no more than a Maryland private's coat from the French and Indian War.
Is that supposed to be like? Oh,
That's
wait.
just-
So
That's
that
just
would
like
be
a regular soldier's
regular-
coat.
okay.
Yes, it's just a regular
So
soldier's
it's not
coat.
as fancy as it
Not
appears.
nearly as fancy as it should be
I
for Oglethorpe
see,
in his
I
full
see.
dress. Now,
Mhm.
generals in the field would often wear very plain red clothing. It was almost like a thing. It's like you wanted your men to look fantastic in actual battle, but when you were on campaign, if you were a general, and as long as you were in red of some sort,
Good to go.
you were good to go. And it was sort of like how nonchalant could you be leading all these men? So,
Uh-huh.
so this could kind of work for Oglethorpe maybe if he's on campaign, if he's at the Battle of Bloody Marsh or something like that. But it's not going to be something he wears to Parliament or wears to meet with the trustees and things like that. But I do like the fancy red outfit. I don't
like
have
it.
many red outfits. This is the only one, but it's quite comfortable.
Yes, I
And
love it.
And the roughly
Oh yes, love the ruffles
The-
and
the-
the
the
buttons.
roughly wrist and the roughly.
And
neck.
remind us, what is this style of hat? Is that the
That-
tricorn?
Oh,
Is that the?
that's a
that's
cocked hat.
Ah, okay.
Tricorn is actually a gross modern anachronistic
Oh,
misnomer
no.
term that we use. Everyone uses. I've
Yeah.
used it, but the proper term, they call it a tricorn, right? Because it's folded into 3 corners, but it's really the proper term is a cocked hat.
A cocked hat. Nice.
Because you cock the sides up,
Uh-huh.
and a cocked hat could be just cocked on one side, but this is very much a big fancy wide hat that can get in the way if you're trying to go through doorways or something like that. But it is, heaven help me, as I've said before, the 18th century is sort of my default, but it just the clothes just feel comfortable
Yeah.
to me. How weird is that? I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to wear a tie to this board meeting.
Right,
That
yeah.
sucks. And then I'm like, oh, this is.
Oh,
if I could just
wow.
bring it up to my ears, I'm very comfortable. Thank you.
So I see we've got some of our regular friends here. Want to say hello to Laura. Hello, Laura
Hello.
on YouTube. We've got Olivia Burke is back. Hello,
Yay!
Olivia. Olivia on Twitch says, hello, it's been so long since I've been able to tune in live. No worries, Olivia. We're so glad that you're here. We also have, I'm probably going to say this incorrectly. G Saxina on YouTube says, love your programs. And they also have a question for us. So we've got that in
Yay.
the queue. Don't worry. And Alma and Gabby are here as well. Oh, I see. So Alma says that Gabby gave her question before she left for school. And Clavion is here on Twitch. Hello,
Yay.
Clavion. So all of our regulars. And Karen is also here. Hello, Karen on Facebook. So last time on LoFi History in September, we didn't get around to all of the questions, and I wanted to get to these. So we're going to start with the questions we had in our queue last time, and then we will get to your questions today. So if this is if you haven't ever chatted a question to us, we do encourage you to. Any history question at all, just make sure that it's family friendly and you're good to go. So let's see, our last time they wanted to talk about, mining disasters and unions. This is an interesting topic. So Elizabeth last month asked about the history of mining disasters and the formation of unions. first, let's just give a brief overview of mining in America. I'm sure that most of us are familiar with the various gold rushes and silver rushes. But it seems like whoever has come to the New World has always been in search of gold, for sure.
Yes,
but
certainly.
when did this begin, and when did actually mining practices
So
begin?
most people think of mining as one of two things. It's either the old gray-haired bearded man in overalls leaning over a creek with a pan going like this, gosh darn dagnabbit, find the gold nuggets, right? That's what people think of. Or they think of large like shafts dug into a mountain with a wooden outline, and it's a tunnel that just goes deep and deep and deep, and there's people in the bottom and with picks and digging.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those are forms of mining. But there are various kinds of mines. There's hydraulic mining, which is where you get water at high pressure. And this happened up the road in Dahlonega for gold mining, and this happened in the West for silver and for gold mining. You take pressurized water and shoot it through a hose and aim it at a mountainside, and basically, very rapidly, very unenvironmentally friendlyly, erode the entire mountain down into a valley. And at the valley, you've got all these catches that takes all the soil down into a specific sluice, sort of a channel that goes all the way to bottom. And there are varying types of machines that sift and sift and sift, so that when you get to the bottom, you have gold or silver or whatever ore you happen to be looking for. That's generally how you do precious metals. Gold, silver, to a much lesser extent, copper. That takes a lot of labor. I'm not even going to get it. We won't even get into the environmental issues, but that takes a lot of labor. But when you actually start placing shafts into the earth, either horizontal, vertical, or both, that is a lot of digging. That is a lot of shoring up. And of course, depending upon how well it's shored up, the quality of materials, the attention made, how fast you're going, they can be very, very dangerous. And so mine collapses, of course, are something that happens very frequently, especially in coal mines in West Virginia and some of the precious metal mines out west. And everything's gold and silver. There's lead mining, coal. There's iron, right? They're having to dig iron ore too. That's how you get iron out of the ground is these mines. So it takes especially in a pre-modern era, it takes a lot of heavy muscle to go in, dig the stuff, get the extra, the waste out, and process everything. Which means the work is cheap. It doesn't require a lot of brain power. They're just looking for muscle power, and that's what they're paying for. And so conditions can be absolutely horrific. Not just working conditions, but outside of the work, the living conditions, because of the low pay, because of the environment, can be absolutely horrible. So unions, there are a variety of ways that unions started, but mining unions are certainly something that begun. The problem with mining, and this happens in U.S. history, mining for metals, for materials, those materials tend to be of significant value and sometimes significant strategic value. And so if all the coal miners suddenly decide to go on strike, well, now not only is nothing heated, but now the trains won't move, and the trains are the main means of transportation for the entire country. It would be like everyone who sells gas deciding that they're going to go on strike and shut down all the pumps. The country would collapse within 4 hours, right? So the government would often work with management to try to stop these strikes if unions did try to do something. And what you've touched on is a very complicated subject, but it is something, and over time, conditions did slightly improve, but mining is still some of the most difficult, most bad for your health work that can be done in the entire planet.
Yeah, and I was just pulling up some different images of different types of mining. And Glenn, let me know if there's something we should more specifically look up. But I've at least got this is very classic.
Right, yeah, the placer mining, because they're doing it in place.
Yes. So can you describe, what types of people or I guess mostly men, would go out to do placer mining in particular? Because I think this is sort of the the romantic view of the gold rushes, going out and striking it rich and finding a gold nugget in the river. But
Right.
what was more of the reality
So
for these folks?
that sort of is the reality. Basically, placer mining only requires one person to do it, and that's the thing. These men are going out. They're not forming companies. They don't have the money to bring the company or have people work for them. Usually, that's later. All these people are striking out, moving fast individually to get there as quick as possible, and moving along the streams to see where the gold will be. And then they're, quote, staking their claim. They're saying, oh, there's gold here, so now I'm going to run into the land office and claim this piece of land as quick as possible. You only usually get one piece of land in a territory. So you want to go see if there's the likelihood of gold there, and the best way to do that is just kind of spot check it with those pans. You dig the pan into the soil, and you shake it around with water, and basically you're moving out the lighter dirt and soil and getting to the heavier stuff, and it starts to get into the black stuff, and then it's easier to see and find the gold that way. And that's what one person can do. Usually what happens is a lot of these people go out there, they don't find anything. Maybe 1 out of 5,000 finds a nugget or a find big enough to actually get rich.
Right.
And then when they do, some big company comes in, forces them to sell the lot, or they sell the lot anyway, and then they bring industry in to mine it.
Okay. So interesting. It's almost like the placer miners would kind of do the work of some companies to find where the best gold deposits were, and yeah, then it'd be bought up.
Yep.
Fascinating.
Mining is big business.
Yes. All right, we're going to get to our questions for today, and our first question is from Laura, and Laura says on YouTube, since the Olympics, I've been wondering, how did Japan do such a quick turnaround? Only 20 years after fighting a World War II, they hosted former enemies for the games. Seems quick to me. So can you talk to us about the aftermath of World War II for Japan and how they rebuilt Japan after that?
Do you want to do this, or you want me to?
You start and I'll add.
Okay.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So Japan is utterly destroyed at the end of World War II. Their infrastructure, a significant proportion of their population, but they have always been a remarkably focused, organized, efficient, and industrious people. That's one reason they were able to keep fighting so long with so few resources against the overwhelming industrial might of the United States. So after the war, the Americans realized they were in the midst of a Cold War against the Soviet Union, and they were trying to fight against communism in China, the rise of communism. China hadn't gone communist yet. That doesn't happen until the early 50s. So only 5 or 6 years after the end of World War II. The United States desperately needs a strong partner in the Pacific, and they choose Japan. They want to rebuild Japan, right? America rebuilds Germany after the war too, but they're really focusing on Japan, and they begin to invest in infrastructure. They begin to invest in companies, and the Japanese take this and run with it. Many Japanese of the young generation and that first generation of American occupation really did see the United States as a remarkably benevolent conqueror. Because here was someone who could have who did lay their country waste and could have kept doing it, but instead they're trying to rebuild Japan. They helped them form a new government, a new constitution, a new economy, and they slightly, not totally, but slightly changed their culture to have certain non-militaristic values, let's say, and a lot of Japanese really bind onto this and run with it, and they begin to prosper like they never had before. They start to see that, man, we really can take center stage on the world with our industriousness, with our economy, and soon the occupation ends, and Japan is sort of on their own, and they take off in leaps and bounds. This is very much a generalization, but early on, Japan was seen as someone who they were not seen as innovative, but they could take innovations and improve them and manufacture them at phenomenal rates and find ways to make, like transistor radios and things like that, right? They didn't develop transistor radios, but man, they knew how to make them, and they knew how to make them really good. And so Japan's economy improved, and they saw the United States as a benefactor and then as an economic ally. And it's really not until the 1980s that you start to see any kind of angst between the two countries, and even then it's really just economic. There's no sense whatsoever that there is a political issues between the two countries, and knock on wood, to my knowledge, there haven't really been serious political issues between the United States and Japan. Japan has very heavily leaned upon the United States for its national security. The new Japanese Constitution after World War II basically said the Army and the Navy must be very, very small, and it must never leave the lands and territories of Japan. It can never be an offensive force. It must only be for defense. That was great to maintain a potentially expansive Japanese foreign policy, but it also meant the United States was wholly responsible for defending Japan, and continued to be through the Korean War. It was a major base in the Korean War. It was a major base in the Vietnam War, and remains a close defense partner today. And as a result, Japan and the United States have continued to be very, very close, not just politically and economically, I mean, even culturally, right? The Japanese love baseball. They love basketball. America loves anime and Pokemon and things like that, and samurai movies. Oh my gosh, Akira Kurosawa films are awesome. And they love American cowboys. They are fascinated with American cowboys. So there's a lot of cross-cultural exchange between the countries, and I think even though they are very different in terms of their past, in terms of their root cultures, even in terms of their language, they're really good buddies. I think they complement each other really well, and that's probably one reason with a boost in the economy and the closeness, Japan was able to put on an amazing Olympics.
And it was in, I believe, 1968 that Japan hosted their Olympics, their first Olympics.
Right.
And that was such an important event, not just for Japan, but also it was the first time that the modern Olympics had been hosted on the continent of Asia. And therefore, it was an incredibly important step for world relations, especially for, 20 years earlier, they were part of the Axis powers. It's a chance for them to introduce this new Japan to the world, and probably the Japan that we more closely associate, that we think of today, is debuted really at that Olympics. But one of the very fun things, like one of the fun facts that I learned during this Olympics about that Olympics is that's the first time that like the icons for the different sports are ever debuted, because there was concern about language barriers.
Oh, okay.
As when the world is coming to an Asian country that has a very different alphabet than the rest of the world has. So they're thinking, forward thinkers, very innovative. What can we do? What does everyone know? Pictures. People know pictures. So therefore, they start coming up with like the different like basketball and swimming and like all these different types of pictographs that kind of depict what the events are, so everyone knows what event's happening where and what's going on. And that has actually continued. Everyone loved them. They thought, oh, this is so fun.
I don't have to read.
Yeah.
Yeah,
who likes reading?
I actually found those icons. So first, here's it was 1964. Actually,
I was so close.
Yes, but here we have a picture of the opening ceremony in 1964 in Japan, and here we also have, these are the icons that were chosen, and they're very similar. Like Marie said, it's very similar to today. So that's really neat. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Laura. That was a great question. And let's see, I see our next question comes from, this is, again, I'll probably say it wrong, but Saxina on YouTube says, I love your programs. So their question is, what if the South had won the Civil War? Would we have two countries? Would the South give up slavery with the automated farm equipment development? We always love a good what if question. So, and I feel like we may have touched this before, but So if the Confederacy had won the Civil War, what do you think? What might have plausibly happened to the United States?
There's so many different options and directions to go.
I have my theories.
What? Let's hear them.
So the South wins.
Yes.
Right? That is the basis of this premise.
Yes.
They, therefore, maintain their independence as a sovereign country.
Mm-hmm.
Many revolutions consume themselves, and that's in effect
Right.
what the Southern Revolution was. The South seceded based on the idea of states' rights. During the war, however, the Confederacy was far more centralized and authoritarian than the North was, because it had to survive because of its smaller population, its smaller resources, and things like that. Stick with me, I'm getting there. As a result, once the exterior threat was eliminated that unified them, I wonder if the states would have been able to stick together as closely as they had during the war. I wonder if the precedent of a strong centralized government would not have hacked everyone off and forced them to temper that. I also very much believe that the South would have done everything it could to maintain the institution of slavery. And demographics are going to come into play, and at a certain point, at the pre-war rate, birth rate of the enslaved versus the pre-war birth rate of white people, it wasn't going to be long before it wasn't just that there were a lot of slaves, the slaves were going to outnumber the white population. And as that began to happen, I really think that what you're going to see, I would hope, is a vast amount of uprising and insurrection amongst the enslaved population to throw off the yoke of servitude, of lifetime servitude based on race.
I would imagine that, since these ideas, if we're still, contending that during the Civil War, even if the South had won, there would still be this, fight against slavery, or this idea of abolition. So it would at least have planted that seed in the minds. Not that they weren't already thinking about, I want to be free.
Right.
But knowing that, there's people are talking about this. It's not just us talking about it. It's not just these small abolitionist groups. It's a much more mainstream idea now.
And depending upon when the war you're talking about, the South wins, right?
Yeah.
Does the South win further on into the war when a lot of slaves have already been freed and gone north? Shortly after the Civil War, during the Civil War, there had been a huge influx of Irish immigrants who had joined the Union Army, gained military experience, and fought for the Union. At the end of the war, when was the 67, 68, something like that, the Fenian Uprising, where the intention was of all these Irish vets, they were going to get some weapons, march north, invade Canada, and rip it from the evil English, right? This was a thing. They put it down fairly quickly and made it disperse, but I wonder if this recently freed, formerly enslaved population of African Americans wouldn't have all gotten together at some point and was like, you know what? There's 25,000 of us. We're going south, and we're going to see if we can't take Richmond, or at least cut a swath so big that we're able to free a lot more slaves. Again, we're playing what if, right?
Yes.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I also would even wonder if it would survive to the point of another country just doesn't come in and take it.
Right.
Because that's another thing. The America tried to, why we tried to stay together so hard is because if you split it in half, it's much easier to take half and half than it is to take the whole thing.
Right.
So I would even wonder if an external threat, if Great Britain wasn't like, time to get the colonies back.
Right.
Who's
going to side with them? The North?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
It could be. They use all the cotton anyway. Just go get the cotton cheaper
Yeah.
and own it. Then you don't have to pay the...
that's a good point, too.
That's a very good point.
So I would wonder even if they were even able to survive, which at that point, I highly doubt that the South's idea of their version of a democracy, which was not exactly... Because you also had a bunch of pro-union people in the South as
Right.
well.
Especially close to the borders, yeah.
Yes, so they would, I think, end up having their own civil war within the Civil War.
I think you're right, yeah.
To the point, because there are, I mean, Dade County tried to secede from Georgia. I mean,
West Virginia did secede from Virginia.
Right.
You're going to have large population of Union people as well who are just like, well, either they're going to pack up and leave and go north, or going to fight within their own state.
Right, and it's not just, I mean, Dade County did, but it's not just little pieces here and there. A third of Tennessee, almost all of East Tennessee, was very strongly Union. The part of Georgia we're in may not have been anti-slavery, but they were very much pro-Union. So maybe East Tennessee and Northeast Georgia split off and found some other state and then immediately joined the Union.
And then you have a state that's in the Union in the middle of the Confederacy.
Good times. By that point, we're at World War I, and there's trench warfare along Missionary Ridge.
That's a great question, though. Oh, I mean, it's a fascinating what if.
Yes.
Oh, I also see we do have David here.
Oh, good.
We do. We're excited. David is one of our regulars and a friend of the museum, and has sent Glen something very interesting. I also wanted to say hello to Make Mistakes on Twitch. Hello, Make Mistakes. Good to see you. And we do have a few more questions, but let's take a brief pause since David is here and sent this all the way from Wales?
From Wales.
From Wales all the way to Gainesville, Georgia.
That's right.
So, what do we got?
I'm going to take these off and get serious for a second.
Yes.
Because, David, this is some remarkably cool stuff. I am overwhelmed that you would think of us and think of me to do this, so I've got to share these things. I'm not sure which one to start with first because every one tells a story. I've got here this first one. This is basically a leave. Emergency Commission Officers, Regular Army, Class A release in the UK. This is from 49. So this is from a soldier named Captain K.R. Adams, who was in the Order of the British Empire, by the way, a member of the British Empire, and so he's being released from military service in 1949 because there are still people serving in the British military in 1949. That's after the war. This is before the war. This is before World War II. The Sergeant's Mess Rules of the 1st Battalion of the King's Own Royal Regiment. To show you how formal and hidebound the British Army was in the interwar years when there was still very strong class distinctions between the officers and the enlisted men. And there are 16 pages of rules of how to eat and where to sit and who will speak to whom and things like that, because being in the Army is a very, very serious business. And this one, this is so neat. Here in the United States, we had ration books in World War II because we had to conserve our resources, right? We had to make sure that the military had enough meat, had enough processed food, had enough fuel, had enough aluminum, and so rationing takes place. Well, the United States more or less ended rationing before the war with Japan ended because we're the United States and we had vast numbers of resources. But you have to remember that Great Britain had fought, it was against the ropes. Its back was against the wall in the early days of World War II when it stood alone against Germany in 1940 and a good chunk of 1941. And it took everything Great Britain had to fight and win this war. And this right here is a physical manifestation and example of that. This is a Ministry of Food ration book dated, that's right, folks, 1953 and 54. Rationing did not end in Great Britain until 10 years after World War II. That's how hard they were hit.
Wow.
And so this is for Charles A. Milton, and it has the coupons and things that they're going to have to tear out so that they can access food. Shows you how hard Great Britain was hit in World War II. Well, one of the reasons it took so much in World War II is because Great Britain had more or less exerted every ounce of effort in the Great War in World War I, to the point that, in 1914, the British Empire was the greatest empire in the world. It was at its peak. The Navy was larger than the U.S. Navy. The Army was small but incredibly professional, and it had dominion over the entire face of the planet. This is the point in 1914 where the sun literally never set on the British Empire. And when it goes to war against Germany and Austria-Hungary and Turkey, it also at that point enters into the Great War, the greatest struggle it had ever had in its existence. And it draws upon the entire Dominion, all of its colonies, and everyone in its family to fight. And David, this is the one you warned me about. I'm not going to unfold it totally, but when you unfold it, I'm going to get it framed. I've already had someone measure it for a frame. This is an officer's commission dated July 1916, the same month as the Psalm, by the way, for William Jesse. He's being commissioned a second lieutenant in the infantry in the Indian Army Reserve Force. So he's not going to be an officer of British soldiers. He's going to be an officer of soldiers in the Indian Army. Now you think, oh, well, that's so far away from the Western Front. Were they fighting? Yes, they were. The Indian Army Reserve Force fought around the world. They fought against the Ottomans especially. There were some at Gallipoli. There were some on the Western Front. The nation of India in World War I looked this up, lost 62,000 killed. That's just India. Mm-hmm. Folks, that's more than the U.S. lost killed in World War I. That's not counting wounded. And so here we have an officer's commission of someone who's going to be leading the infantry and fighting with those troops in the Great War. I'm not as good at having access to Brit genealogy and military records as I am U.S. So, David, you may have some information. I'm going to look this up. This is absolutely fascinating. This is one of the coolest things anyone has ever sent me. Thank you so much. There's a lot of history here in this tube of wonders that you sent all the way from Wales.
Yes, thank you so much, David.
Here's
that
looking at you, kid.
Yeah. And David says, love his interpretation. He understands the facts behind him. And David also mentions he was born in Lucknow. Does that place ring a bell? Lucknow. I don't know where that's at. Is that in Germany? No. I don't know. We'll have to look it up.
We'll have to look it up.
But thank you so much, David.
Thank you, sir.
That's awesome. So we've got, we also have Elizabeth and Thomas. Hello, hi. Welcome back, my friends. And we've also we have Josh. Hello, Josh. All right, so we got some more questions for y'all. So next, we have a question from Gabby and Alma. So Gabby asks, what is your favorite period musical and why? But she goes on to say, but in honor of the Hamilton musical theater camp she did last week, how cool. Glen sighs. Alma says, I am hijacking her question with a what if. What do you think would have happened if Burr had not shot Hamilton? What else might Hamilton have accomplished? Do you think their rivalry helped to accomplish more in their life? So first, Marie, I want to go to you for this first question. What's your favorite period musical and why?
Les Miserables.
Les Mis!
Yes,
yeah.
I love Les Mis. Based on the book by Victor Hugo, and it's about the rebellions, specifically the one that happened in, I believe, 1836 in France. And I love just the human condition that is on display in Les Mis itself, the stories of redemption and heartache, and I think it's just, you could pick Les Mis up and put it in any period and it would work. As long as there's a barricade.
There's always barricades.
There's always barricades. So I think for societies that find themselves wanting to have a hero, trying to find love, it speaks to the human condition in such a great way, and there's something for everyone. There's and also you're following Jean Valjean throughout his life, so you kind of get to see him grow as a human and as a person as well. But I really I love Les Mis. It was one of my first musicals that I
Same
really
here,
got
yes.
obsessed with. And I have a special place in my heart for it because of that.
Yeah, I would say Les Mis as well. I also it was middle school for me.
Yes!
Yes, yeah. So for whatever for our age group, for musical theater lovers, Les Mis is definitely a favorite. And Alma also says that Les Mis is one of Gabby's top 5 musicals. Awesome. Glenn, or do you have? I know you may not be the biggest fan of musical theater, but
I like some musicals.
Yeah.
I like the ones I like.
you like the ones you like.
I don't. That's the only way I can put it. I do like Les Mis. I love Phantom.
Oh yeah.
Sounds good.
My Fair Lady.
Oh yeah, that's a fun
I'm
one.
fond of that one.
Yeah.
Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh,
that's a
that's
good
a great, yeah, and you know what? That's a great period musical.
Yeah,
I mean, you
why
learn a
not
lot
have the
about culture.
Russians, invoke a pogrom against the Jews somewhere in Russia? That's some strong history right there.
Yeah, and yet there's so much life and comedy and joy in Fiddler. That's really brought out, kind of similar to Les Mis. It's like you were saying, Marie. It's human condition on display.
Yep.
Now, going into the next part, to Alma's question, so, big what if, what would have happened if Burr had not shot Hamilton? And maybe if you can give us, I'm sure most people are aware of vaguely that, yes, there was a duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, but can you briefly explain why were they mad at each other, and what's your guess as to what Hamilton might have accomplished had he not been shot by Aaron Burr?
Okay. Hamilton is a very strong Federalist. Aaron Burr was a politician who was out for Aaron Burr. Hamilton tended to call him on things like that. Hamilton also, during the election of 1800, shifted his allegiance. The election of 1800, there was a tie in the Electoral College, which constitutionally meant that it went to the House of Representatives. There were, I always forget this number, 27 ballots in the House of Representatives, and they were all ties as well. And so Alexander Hamilton was there, and he was trying to influence the New York constituency, because it was a tie between Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. That's what was happening. And so Burr was supposed to be Jefferson's vice president, and as it turns out, he had a chance to be president. Well, instead of stepping down and saying, no, Mr. Jefferson, you can be president, he saw an opportunity. He sniffed an opportunity and slithered towards it. And as a result, Alexander Hamilton basically said, you know what? I don't like Jefferson. Jefferson is a hardcore Republican, like 1800 Republican. Democratic Republican, but at least he likes America, and Aaron Burr is an awful person. So let's vote for Thomas Jefferson. So he shifted those votes in New York, which made Jefferson the president, and Burr never forgave him for that.
Ah, okay.
That's one of the things.
Right.
They had a long history of disagreements. He also beat out his father-in-law for a Senate seat in New York, basically because he changed parties to run against Schuyler. So Aaron Burr is out for Aaron Burr. He does not have any principles. He doesn't stand for anything other than Aaron Burr. So basically, Hamilton was like, you know what? I hate Jefferson, but at least he stands for something.
Right.
I know what he is.
Right.
I know what he stands for.
Yeah.
I hate it, but at least I know what I hate.
Right.
Where Aaron Burr will just do anything to further Aaron Burr's own ambition. So I think Aaron Burr, oh, wait, what was the question?
Oh, so we're wondering, if Hamilton had survived.
But does that mean Aaron Burr dies?
Ah, yes.
See, if Aaron Burr doesn't die, he's just going to try to shoot him later.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
that's funny, but I honestly think that.
Yeah,
in 10 years and 10 months, he's going to try to shoot. He's going to have another duel with Hamilton. And Hamilton being Hamilton is not going to be able to back down.
Hamilton has a little bit of a pride issue as well.
I see. So maybe there is no future
winner.
in which
there's no winner.
Hamilton survives.
And that's
unless
the thing.
Hamilton shoots Burr, and then just Hamilton lives out his life doing Hamilton thinks.
Right.
I think Hamilton would have gotten as much bad press if he had done that as Burr did for shooting Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because Burr kind of had to run away and go sail down the Mississippi or something.
Right, and try to
just
make a separate country that seceded from the United States with Wilkinson. That's a whole other story.
Yeah. I mean, just the relationship between Hamilton and Burr could be a whole program. So that's an excellent idea, Alma.
I mean, they made it into a musical.
They did,
Because Aaron Burr is like kind of the narrator of
the
musical.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, he's kind of telling the story.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Excellent question, Alma, and please thank Gabby. Of course, I guess we can thank Gabby for her question when she watches this later. Awesome question, Gabby. Always love it. So, all right, great. We're going to move on to our next question. Our next question in the queue is from Karen. And, we have a question about your hat. Let's see. Is the cockade on the hat white or black? I know that was the symbol used by the American Army after the French Alliance. Obviously not Oglethorpe's time.
Right.
But could you explain what this your little adornment is?
It's actually white and black. If you look at it closely, it's white on the front of black. Cockade was added to show political allegiance or to turn a civilian hat into something kind of military. And different cockades meant different things. I think the black and the white was mostly could be adopted by a couple of different things. To be honest, I don't think that I got this hat with a cockade on it, by the way. I did not put it. And I think that the black and white cockade is really just to add a military flair to this particular hat.
Did it denote rank at all?
The cockades did not. There were other things that could be on the hat that could denote rank. The epaulets and the cut of not the cut, but the trim of the uniform could denote rank. But the cockade was just sort of a. Now the officers, the higher up you go, the officers did have fancier cockades because
got more money. Why not?
That's right. They're officers, but generally the cockade is just a military thing, and that survives even on into from that point to the War of 1812. Even when the hats totally change, if you suddenly join the militia and you want to add just a little bit of formal military flair and uniformity to your outfit, you'll just put a little leather cockade with a silver eagle in the middle of it on your hat, and suddenly, poof, military.
And civilians would also. I have a morning cockade, as I said,
right,
that I'm actually wearing. On my blouse, you can kind of see it. It's black on black, so perhaps not. But civilians would also wear cockades, basically the same way we would almost wear like political pins to this day, to support candidates, to support movements. I'm particular in my head thinking of ones that people wore to support secession or to support the Union during the American Civil War. It was people wore them up until then. I think that's probably one of the last large times that people were wearing cockades instead of buttons, because at that point you start to have the Industrial Revolution, and then you have buttons start to become more popular than like the ribbon cockades, because it's easier to mass produce a button than it is to produce a very intricately folded cockade. But history of cockades are very interesting, and the millions of different things that people use them for, because like some people still use them for mourning. Sometimes they would put like the little picture of the person that they were mourning in the middle of the cockade. And buttons, if you had like a military button, civilians might use the military button and put it on the cockade and then wear it to support that military.
Yeah, so we have two examples. I know one is French. I don't know what the other one was, but I just got it off of Wikipedia for
it
decades.
looks Scottish.
Yes, it does look Scottish.
That's I think that's Bonnie Prince.
I believe you are
Bonnie Prince with his the white cockade on a blue bonnet was very much a Jacobite badge. So if you saw anyone wearing a white cockade or even a white piece of ribbon on their Highland bonnet, they were a Jacobite, and you should behave accordingly.
Which means they supported Bonnie Prince Charlie.
Yes.
And didn't want to have the George on the throne.
Oh, I
right.
see.
It was the Stuarts.
the
versus
Stuarts.
the House of Hanover.
Love it.
You're like, they're German. They don't even go here.
So let's see. We've got time for. I think we can get through these if we maybe make
Okay,
it a little
speed
bit more of
round.
a
Let me get
speed
settled
round
in.
because we only got 10 more minutes. So Olivia, I love this question, Olivia. Olivia says, a while ago we had gotten some chickens and a duck. How cool.
Nice.
And that got me wondering, when did chickens become a thing in the Americas? And if we need to do a little bit of Googling, I'm happy to do that.
From the very beginning, right? Chickens have been around forever. Chickens serve two purposes, and this is why they're so good at food. They lay eggs, and eggs you can do anything with. Just ask French chefs. So they provide food in the form of eggs, but if you need meat, the beauty of a chicken is that a chicken can be killed and cooked immediately and provide enough meat for a single family.
Right.
It's right. If you slaughter a pig or a bull or something like that, there's so much meat and you have to preserve it, and it takes time and processing. But a chicken, snap, boil, season, you're ready to go.
I love the sound effects
Thank
there. No, it looks like just from the little Googling that I've done that chickens were likely first domesticated 5,400 years ago in Southeast Asia, although there is archaeological evidence of wild chickens going back as far as 12,000 years in northern China, but these were not, the domesticated chicken that we know and love.
Fat, plump, and delicious.
Yes, but that's an excellent question.
Excellent question, Olivia.
I didn't even see it coming.
Didn't even see it coming.
All right, next quick fire round. Jose on YouTube, YouTube asks, what if FDR was successfully assassinated in January of 1933? Who would have been his successor? And what are your what if thoughts on that successor?
Who was his vice president on his first term? Check.
Was it because it was first?
It wasn't
had
Wilkie,
like 4.
was it?
Let's see. We have the names that come up. John Nance Garner. Is that correct?
I don't even know who that. I don't know
sure
who that is.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
But that would have changed the recovery plan, perhaps.
Yes. So
For the Great Depression.
the little bit that I have found about John here, and I will put his picture up as well.
Right.
So let's see, he was known as Cactus Jack and was an American Democratic politician and lawyer from Texas.
All right.
32nd vice president, and he served from 1933 to 1941. Also, he was a Speaker of the House of Representatives, and it looks like he served in Texas for a good while. Let's see.
I mean, it would all depend on that guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know
know
anything about him.
What he
Sorry.
would do.
Yeah, so who knows what this we got a Texas politician and lawyer.
Right.
Let me put up his picture.
And that's the thing, you got to remember how politics works. FDR probably didn't choose him because they were perfectly ideologically aligned. FDR chose him because they could get along and he could give the Democratic Party Texas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
I mean, that's
right.
that's it. I mean, that's why he was chosen.
Yeah, so there's Tex. Oh wait, no, he was called
he-
Cactus Jack.
He looks like a Texan.
And I'm sure there's interesting bits about him, but I think for now we'll have to just play with the
Maybe
what
we'll
if
do
of-
some research. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
so
would
that's
assume
Cactus
they
Jack.
might not have gotten along very well because he was not his vice president
The next time,
the next
yeah.
time.
Well, no, he was his vice president for 2 terms.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah,
not
yeah.
all 4.
Not all 4.
Yeah, from 1933 to 1941.
Oh, he almost was president.
Wow. Yeah,
You
so
just
we'll
stick
have to,
around a little bit longer.
Yeah. So his name, if you want to learn more about him, I don't want to just read a Wikipedia article, but it's John Nance Garner. John Nance Garner.
I need to remember that.
Also known as Cactus Jack. All right. And could you give me? I don't know much about the assassination attempt.
I just know that there was one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
it's a hard time in the States, and that was a pretty contentious election.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that someone was trying to assassinate FDR, probably because he wasn't radical enough. He was either too radical or not radical enough.
Mm-hmm. All right, so thank you, Jose. I'm sorry we couldn't
elaborate
more, but if you want to look up John Nance, the Cactus Jack, then you can find some information there.
I would bet that Cactus Jack would not have gotten along with Churchill as well.
Maybe not. Yeah, right.
I don't think. Yeah.
That's a great question. So Thomas asks, not knowing much about the British Army past the Revolutionary War, was the buying and selling and commissions a thing for a long time? Was that ever a part of the U.S. military? Buying and selling and commissions.
That was never a part of the U.S. military. It was a part of the British military to a greater or lesser extent during the Napoleonic War. When the Napoleonic Wars and the French Revolutionary Wars began, yes, it was still a thing. It continued as a thing throughout the Napoleonic Wars, but as war often does, especially a war that great, there was much more opportunity to advance by ability. Not totally. Buying and selling commissions was still mostly the way to get a commission, but there was a lot more opportunity in the Napoleonic Wars. After that, yeah, the peacetime army goes back to selling commissions and buying commissions, and that's how you got to be an officer. The army didn't really get away from that and professionalize until after 1900.
And that wasn't just a thing in England either, also in France.
Oh yeah,
and
any of the
Europe.
monarchies, France, Russia, Prussia, maybe not quite so much Prussia. Prussia expected its officers to actually know some things.
And this was very much a career path for the second son of wealthy families. So much so. Now, the French word for the second son literally means, like, guy who goes to the army. I'm not going to try to pronounce it.
Right.
I'm just going to butcher it. But it literally is, that was kind of expected for the second son of wealthy people, because the first one gets to inherit everything, and then the second one has to go figure out his own way in the world. Why not go into the army? Get him a commission.
Excellent question. Yes, excellent question, Thomas. Thank you so much. All right, next quickfire. Oh, we only have a few minutes, so I hope we can. How about this? As usual, we will save the last few questions for our next Lo-Fi history. But let's end with Josh. Has a question. A good old what if from Josh. What if the 22nd Amendment never passed? Which presidents following its failure to pass might have tried for a third term or more? So the 22nd Amendment being the amendment that said that a president cannot serve more than 2 terms. Right. So do you have any feelings on what presidents might have wanted to serve multiple more than 2 terms?
And you have to remember, the only thing that kept presidents to 2 terms before FDR was the precedent that Washington set by refusing to run for a 3rd term. That's it. It was merely good form.
Because to me, I'm going through 2 parts in my mind: is who would want to, and then who had the situation to where they actually probably could have.
I guess are there any presidencies that may have benefited from their perspective for their agenda had they had a longer term? I mean, I'm talking about presidents during wars or. I mean,
I was going to say FDR or JFK if he lived, but that's a what if to a what if.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, JFK probably could have. People seem to like him, but people kind of liked him more because he got assassinated, and then they could kind of idolize and mythologicalize and be sad about it versus him actually doing things.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the way the presidential system is set up and the way American politics runs, they're very fickle. No president in history gets, FDR perhaps being the exception because it was during World War II. No president who is popular enough to be elected to a 2nd term gets out of his 2nd term as popular as he was going into it. Ever. Not even George Washington. People were burning his effigy and wanting to kill him by the end of his 2nd term. And that's George Washington. And so when you start getting into, a post-FDR, when you start getting into the 60s and the 70s,
when
I don't think
governmental distrust is at an all-time shooting up.
Yeah, I don't think any president would have gotten a third term.
Ronald Reagan was
People were sick of him. People were sick of him at the end of his second term. He might, if any of them were going to do it, he might be the one.
That's what I'm just trying to think of one that might.
But we also know now that he might have not had the most healthy mental faculties for a
that's
third
the other
term.
thing is like if he was, I don't think he would have been physically able.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, a lot of presidents are going to be fairly older.
Reagan was, I think wasn't Reagan the oldest person to take office?
I believe so.
Until recently.
Until Trump, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think so. And then I think Joe Biden beat them both.
Okay.
I can't remember. It's the older presidents entering office have been very recent.
Right. I guess, that kind of makes sense in a way. They're going to be healthier nowadays.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But there's also, that was part of the magic of JFK's,
he
of
was
his
the youngest.
Right.
Ever.
He was the youngest, and he was supposed to, that was part of his appeal, right? He was bringing a verve and vigor and vitality to the office that hadn't been seen in a long time.
Ever.
In a long time, yeah.
Well, folks, we're already 2 minutes past the hour, but thank you so much for joining us for Lo-Fi History. We will get to the questions that we didn't get to on our next Lo-Fi History on November 2nd, Tuesday, November 2nd at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Also wanted to let everyone know that we do have digital memberships. You can enjoy weekly members-only live stream programs with guest historians, living history, and of course, fascinating topics. In fact, Marie, why don't you give us a sneak preview of your Disney members program that's coming up?
Yes. So on October 1st, just a few days ago, Disney celebrated its 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World in Florida. So we are going to be talking about the magic that is Walt Disney World, how it came to be, and how a swamp in Florida turned into the most magical place on earth.
So if you are interested in the history of Disney, then please become a digital member. And thank you, David, so much for saying the membership is well worth it. We think so, too. And, of course, if you want to check out all of our upcoming live streams, we've got Meet the Author events going on. We've got, our next week, I believe it's next week. Yes. Marie is also going to be presenting a live stream about the history of the domestic cat. This has been a requested topic, and we have met your demands for the history of the domestic cat. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And Marie even got to interview some cat experts. You can hear from a cat behaviorist. So if you want to understand cat behavior, and if you've ever heard of the famed acro cats that are from here in Georgia, then we also got to talk to the stage manager, the production manager of the amazing acro cats. So we look forward to seeing you at our next Lo-Fi History, and hopefully before then during our live stream programs or here at the History Center. All right, everybody, take care till next time. Bye.